Hi, I'm Maggie. Thank you for stopping by Crafts the Charm today. I'm so glad you're here. And today I'm going to craft with these Dollar Tree accent rugs again. I absolutely love these, particularly these blue ones. So I have a blue one here. It's the same one that I made a boho pillow out of. And for this project, I'm actually going to use two of these. So if you're going to do the same project that I'm doing, find two that are the same width because they do vary in width somewhat. And I'm just going to remove the tag and the little tag that's sewn into the rug from the first rug. And Dollar Tree has lots of fun yarn lately. I'm going to use this Just Chenille medley, and the color is burgundy. Now, I find these rugs pretty easy to embroider on because you have the warp and the weft threads, so you can sort of align your stitches according to the threads. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put about 3 rug widths of the chenille yarn on a yarn needle. And that should be enough to do a cross stitch all the way across and back. I'm going to do 3 stitches total, but just 2 with this burgundy yarn. So I'm going to start a couple of weft threads up from the bottom and a couple of warp threads in from the left side. I'm going to come up with my needle through the back of the rug. So I'm going to come up and I'm going to go over 2 warp threads and up 1 weft thread, so making a little diagonal for my X. So I'll go down just to the left of a warp thread and I'll come up to the right of the warp thread but back down where I originally came up, so below the weft. And I'm going to do that all the way across until I'm just a couple of warp threads from the right side. And then I'm going to make my X's. So I'm just going to go back, basically doing the same thing. I'll come up at the bottom, I'll go over 2 warp threads, go down in front of a warp thread or to the right of it, and then come up below and to the left of it, and just continue all the way back. With this project, I decided to do most of the weaving in as I went, so I wouldn't have a lot of weaving in at the end. So once I'm done with that, I'm just going to flip it over and weave in what's left of my yarn. So I'm just going to go under some of the stitches and then back down through them and then trim that off. Now for my next stitch, I'm going to do a chain stitch, and I'm going to start just 1 weft thread over or above the little cross stitches that I just did. So I'll poke up and then I will poke down just 1 weft thread to the right of that, but I'm going to leave a loop. And then I'm going to come up about 3 warp threads below that, but inside the loop, and then poke the needle down right next to that one, but 1 to the right, 1 weft thread to the right, and then pull that loop tight. And then repeat that. So from the back, poke up about 3 warp threads below, and then poke down next to that, just a weft thread to the right, but inside the other loop that we just made, and then pull that loop tight. Then we come up again, down again, inside the loop, and then pull it tight. So every time we go down, we have sort of a loop of thread that's over the front of our work, and that's what we're going to pull around our stitches. The way that I finish this off is once I reach the other end, when I come up with my first stitch inside the loop, I then just go down right next to it, but outside the loop, pulling the loop tight, and then I come up next to that and go down next to that. And I'm not sure really how you're supposed to finish off a chain stitch if you're doing one like this, which is sort of a row, but I think that preserves the look of the chain because that sort of would be where the stitches are for the next link in the chain if you were going to make one. So after this, I then did another set of the little crosses above that. And again, I have basically 1 weft thread between each of my different stitches. And that doesn't sound like very much, but the weft threads are really like a bundle of threads that were woven when this rug was made. So here's what it looks like at the end with the cross stitch and then the chain stitch and then the cross stitch. And you can see I've done that at the other end of the rug as well, so I've mirrored that. Now, what I have here is one of the few things in this project that isn't from the Dollar Tree, and this is this chunky off-white yarn that I bought at JoAnn's a long time ago. And what I'm going to do with this is really simple. I'm going to come up between my first set of crosses and my chain stitch. And what I'm going to do is just weave this yarn under the dark blue warp threads. So that's it. I'm just sliding it under each of the dark blue threads in one row. So there's more than one dark blue thread. One will be over, one will be under. I'm just going under the ones that are over. And this is super simple. You only have to cut a piece that's a little bit longer than the width of the rug, just so you have enough to weave in the ends on the underside. And I was able to slip my yarn needle comfortably under 4 of the warp threads and then pull the yarn through and then do the next 4. Again, very, very quick, but I love the way it looks. So I'm doing that between both sets of the cross stitches and the chain stitch. And then for the back, for weaving in, I'm just basically doing the same thing. I'm just sliding it under some of the blue warp threads and trimming it off. Now what you'll notice with this project is that you can do, of course, whatever stitches you want, and you can do them in a different configuration from what I do. I really like the look of this little pattern that I just made. You could repeat that along the entire rug. The look that I'm going for with the pattern that I make is a sort of ticking look, and I think you'll think it looks sort of like ticking when you see the final pattern, maybe not. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to leave a space. I am leaving a space of 10 weft threads. So I just counted 10 over, and I started with my cross stitch pattern again. And I'm going to do most of this stitching off screen now. Okay, so here's what I have, and I wanted you to see what it looked like at this point. So what I've done is I've got the cross stitch, chain stitch, cross stitch with the white yarn between on either end. And then for my big bar there, I've done cross stitch, chain stitch, cross stitch, then 3 chain stitch, then cross stitch, chain stitch, cross stitch. And then I've got a really narrow bit where I've just done 2 cross stitch. And you can see I've put the white yarn between the cross stitch and chain stitch, just like I did on the ends. And then I've also put it between the 2 cross stitches. Where I didn't put it is between the 3 chain stitches in the middle of the larger bar. And I didn't put it between the cross stitch and those chain stitches in the middle of the larger bar. And I've done it all on the left side. I haven't finished it on the right side because I wanted you to see what it looked like without the white yarn in there. But now what I'm going to do is match the right side to the left side with the white yarn. And I also wanted to show you this other yarn, which I'm not going to use, but this is another one of the fun yarns that they have at the Dollar Tree now. And this one is called Just Yarn Plush, although it looks a lot like eyelash yarn, maybe just a little bit thicker and fluffier than eyelash yarn. And the color of this one is Night Sky. And I just thought that this color was pretty with this whole pattern with this rug. So I just wanted to show you what it would look like on here. I am not including it in my table runner, but if you wanted to sort of pump up the blue on this, then I think this would be a good choice, this yarn. Now, here's my second rug, and I am not going to be embroidering this rug at all. This rug, we're going to remove the tags, and then I'm going to find the middle of my other rug. So for my rug, I have 16 more weft threads between those 2 inner bits of embroidery. So I have a red cross stitch, then 16 weft threads, then a red cross stitch. And I'm marking that. And what I'm going to do now is sew on either side of that. So I'm just sewing a couple of weft threads over, and I'm using a heavy-duty thread. Mine happens to be black. And with that done, I'm going to cut down the middle of this between where I've just stitched. So now my embroidered rug is in 2 pieces. Now I'm going to take one piece and lay it right sides together, the part that I just cut against the end of my other rug. And then I'm going to sew a seam, and I'm going to sew that to the left of the stitch that I did before. So the stitch that I did before is to the inside of the seam, and this new stitch is to the outside, so we won't see that stitching that I did before. And once I've sewn that, I'm going to trim off the fringe, the very end of the other rug. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Put my rugs right side together, the part that I cut, the middle of the rug that's embroidered, against the end of the rug that isn't cut or embroidered. Sew a seam down, making sure that that original stitching that I did is to the right or to the inside of that, and then cut off the fringe. Once I've done that, I'm going to press that seam open on the back and press it very flat on the front. Now this is another stage where you could stop here, or you could have even stopped at the embroidery or whatever embroidery you decided to do, because I think this would make a very nice centerpiece for a table. It doesn't have to be longer. I wanted mine to be longer because I have a leaf in my table, so that's why I put another mat in the middle. What I would like to do to finish this off is to put a little bit of trim on the ends. And what I have here is a fat quarter from the Dollar Tree. And the red of this fat quarter is really, really similar to the red of the yarn, the burgundy yarn that I used. I have a fabric and yarn problem where if I see one I like, I have a tendency to buy it. So I had like maybe 4 different red colors in fat quarters from the Dollar Tree. This one was the best match, in my opinion. So what I'm going to do first is iron that nice and flat, and I considered putting some interfacing on it, but once I ironed it, it actually was pretty stiff. So I felt like it wouldn't fray. Some fabrics are more prone to fraying, but I thought this one was pretty good. Now it's 21 inches by 18 inches. So what I'm going to do is cut the 18-inch dimension into 6 pieces. So I'm going to square off the end and then cut 3-inch lengths of this. So I'll have 6 3 by 21 inch pieces of fabric. And then what I'm going to do is sew these together. So I'm going to put them right sides together in a backwards L, or at a right angle, and clip them. And I'm going to connect them all. Then I'm going to sew a diagonal for each one and trim off the excess. And that way you get diagonal joining, so that so you don't have so much bulk if you do it that way, because the seam is diagonal, so you won't be sewing over it twice when you use this as trim. I'm guessing that's the reason. So then what I'm going to do is iron this. So I'm going to iron all of those diagonal seams flat, and then I'm going to fold each of the ends into the middle and iron that. And once I have that, I'm going to fold over the end. So unfold it, fold the end over, and so I don't have a raw edge, and then refold it and clip that all the way down one side of my table runner. Cut the end, fold it, refold it, and clip. And then I'm going to do the other side. And once I've done that, I am going to sew a straight seam all the way down on both sides. And I'm going to sew that in a little bit so that I'm absolutely certain that I'm sewing it all the way through back to front. If I had cut this perfectly and folded it perfectly, and if my rugs were perfectly the same size, maybe I wouldn't feel like I had to do that, but I wanted to make sure that I was sewing both sides of this on. And then once I've done that, I'm going to iron it, and then I'm going to sew a zigzag stitch down the edge of it on the front. So it's possible some of that zigzag won't be hitting the back of it depending on how perfectly it's folded, but that will hold it down flat on the front. Otherwise it'll stick up a little bit, and I think it won't look good. All right, so that's the whole project. Here it is. I would love to know what you think. Please tell me in the comments. Please tell me what you would have done differently. I always love to hear your ideas. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you enjoy this sort of content, please subscribe to Crafts the Charm. Thank you for spending time with me today. Take care.